Hi, I'm Earl Bailey, and welcome to WMMR's Bruce Springsteen, the Philadelphia Story. You know, Bruce has always had a lot to play for Philadelphia, and we here at WMMR have always had a lot to say to Philadelphia about Bruce Springsteen. And that's what we'd like to do right now. Talk to you about Bruce's and his band's history here in Philadelphia and with this radio station. You know, as a city, we've had a lot to do with getting this great band a foothold on the East Coast of the United States. And as a station, we're proud of the role we had in turning the city onto them. And as we get ready for the September dates here in Philadelphia, we thought we'd go back and take a look at Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band's Philadelphia Story.
Well, I spent these month-long vacations by the radio, searching for a station that's in tune. I swear I heard everything that I ever loved and feared, from a teenage fit to a sonic boom. Well, my feet, they fly like some fruit of the earth, but I got me a nice little place in the stars. And I swear I found the key to the universe at 93.3 WMMR. I hid in the mind, go down in the crowd, but when they sat down, I stood up. Growing up in Philadelphia, growing up.
No, that's not Bruce. We're really not sure who it is, to tell you the truth. Which means it could be him, I suppose. But we don't think so. But we don't know. Here's what we do know. In 1973 and 74, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band played the Main Point, Villanova University, the Earlton Lounge, Widener, Ursinus, Swarthmore, Bucks County Community, Glassboro State, and many more. In those 2 years, he did over 20 shows within a short drive from Center City, which was great for us here at WMMR. We were just a young radio station then, and we had a staff of people who lived the music and grew up with Bruce. In Bruce's case, a guy named David Dye and another one named Ed Shockey led the charge of WMMR's support of Bruce. And as usual, the Philadelphia fans knew the real thing when they saw it. And you guys saw it early with Bruce and the E Street Band. And that support got him on his feet, and the rest, as we say, is history. The turning point came at a place called the Main Point. Isn't that right, Pierre Robert?
You're absolutely correct, my friend, and if I might be so bold, I'd say perhaps the most important city in the United States as far as Bruce is concerned. Let's go back. Twice in the early 70s, although I wasn't here yet in Philly, but WMMR did broadcast Bruce and the band live from the late, great Main Point in Bryn Mawr. The first, as far as any of our hazy memories can recall, came on April 24th in 1973. The next came at the very beginning of the breakout year of Bruce's career, which was 1975. It was February 5th, to be precise, and here's how it sounded.
Main Point, I'm Ed Shockey from WMMR. And with the help of Mom's wholesome audio, we are very happy to be able to share with people all over the Delaware Valley what is a very special evening. Bruce will do a gig tomorrow night and Friday night at Widener, and they'll be his last two performances in Philadelphia for a few months as he goes off to conquer America and the world. Tonight's a very special farewell to the Main Point from Bruce as a benefit for the Main Point. Let's welcome home to the Main Point and to WMMR one more time, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Just a few months before that, Bruce had dropped by the studios at WMMR to spend some time with WMMR alumnus David Dye. The subject was the song Twist and Shout.
The original Twist and Shout, which, how long have you been doing that tune?
Since that was the first song I ever sang, you know, first rock song I ever did. I did that for my first high school dance. You know, I was scared to death, my knees were shaking. Because in those days, like, none of the bands, nobody sang. You know, the whole thing was, at least, you know, in Jersey, like, there was two kinds of groups. You had the a cappella groups, you know, that just sang without the music, and then you had the instrumental groups, you know.
Adventures, right?
Right, you know, you had Takeoffs on the Adventures, the Chevelles, you know, was in our area. And you either did one of the two, you know, you either did one or the other. And then, slowly but surely, you know, like the Beatles Like that was what was so big about them. They sang and played at the same time. At first that was thought to be, now everybody says, takes it for granted. But at the time that was
That's true, isn't it? Yeah. It was really all split up back then.
Yeah.
A little later, Bruce was talking about seeing the country and life on the road.
Our guest, Bruce Springsteen and David Sanchez. You're going to be gigging around this area for a while? Staying at home, or?
Well, we're going to Boston. We're going to Boston Tuesday.
Right.
So, but that's in the area, like the Northeast.
Right. You just got back from Texas. First time.
Yahoo!
First time out that way?
Yeah, never been. Well, I traveled across the country a couple times, and I rode through a lot, but I never stopped.
Yeah.
And it was fun. We had a great time. It was strange too because, the first place we played was Houston, right? And we were playing with these bands. It was all country bands. It's all we saw. So, man, they ain't gonna dig us out here. Oh, we're in trouble. Let's get back, because we were from way over the other side of the tracks, And we came on, and the audience was some of the best people I've ever played to, man. And surprisingly, a lot of people came out. A lot of people came down to see the band, and we'd never been there before. And we went in Phoenix, and we sold out a 3,000-seat place, and it was full of just great people. We had a good time.
They seem to know the tunes, or they just
yeah. That was what was really. We're in Phoenix, Arizona, right? And they knew all the tunes, Spirit of the Night, and they got standing ovations, and it was something. It was really
That's great.
Now, all this was during the Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle days, and Bruce talked about some of the songs on that vinyl LP record album.
Yeah, that was the E Street Shuffle, which is a real big tune on the album. Like, there are a lot of tunes that are more popular on the radio, but live, that's the big tune on the album, it seems.
Well, I don't know.
The reaction when you start going into it.
Like, usually, Rosalita,
Yeah, well, right.
I like to hear Rosalita, and what else do we find is popular? Kitty's Back is real popular, and even New York City Serenade.
I'm really impressed that if you have ever seen Bruce, he starts off with New York City Serenade most of the time, which is a real balls move.
And it's like, that's pretty popular, and of course the real nerve is starting off with either Circus Song or Mary Queen of Hearts, right. To a big place. But E Street Shuffle does okay, it's a good groove tune,
Right.
The groove's nice.
I'm Earl Bailey, just hanging out, talking Bruce Springsteen and the Philadelphia story with some folks around the radio station here. Now, we mentioned a bunch of area places that Bruce and the band had played in the earliest days. One place they did not play was Archbishop Carroll High School in Radnor. Why is that, Kevin Gunn?
First of all, it's probably one of the more dubious distinctions of my old high school, but it's a true story. In 1974, there was a woman named Maura McKinney. She was a girl then, but she was the first kid on the block really to be totally into Bruce Springsteen at my high school. She turned me on to Bruce. She approached the management of Bruce when he was touring around the area and doing the colleges and everything and said, hey, would he come to Archbishop Carroll to do a show? They said, sure, if you can sell X amount of tickets. I think it was 400. I can't be sure. Anyway, we tried and we could not meet the number. We could not get 400 tickets sold, and the reason was simple. It was Memorial Day weekend of 1974, and all the kids at Archbishop Carroll felt like going down the shore and doing the exact things that Bruce Springsteen was singing about, chasing factory girls underneath the boardwalk and all that. So the sad tale is, and even though it is in Dave Marsh's Born to Run book as a date that happened, May 24th, I think, 1974, was supposed to be Bruce at Archbishop Carroll. Did not happen because we couldn't sell the 400 tickets. A great high school that I love dearly, but sadly one of the not the greatest moment in their history.
Now, that was in 74, but Pierre, 1975, busted wide open.
When Bruce did MMR's live broadcast from the main point in February of 75, nobody had any idea how the year would end, and nobody could believe how it did. Born to Run came out in late summer, and around here, a lot of the WMMR air staff at the time spent that autumn, and many of our listeners did too, memorizing the words to the whole LP. Remember, it was vinyl then, so it was an album, okay? And it was no CDs to be had, God bless them. That fall, you could walk around any college, too, and hear Born to Run coming out of kids' dorm rooms. And then on October 27th, both national news magazines, Time and Newsweek, had Bruce on their covers. This, by the way, inspired one of my little favorite Bruce stories where he tried to climb the walls of Graceland. He was firmly rebuffed by the security guards, but he says, hey, I'm on the cover of Time and Newsweek. He still did not get to meet the king. The boss and the king were not to meet, but he tried. And I remember seeing in California that Newsweek on the shelf and going, oh, that's cool. Bruce is on the cover. And then going right down the thing and saying, Time, he's on the cover of both magazines. Now that's cool.
The whole thing with the magazines and stuff, I sort of like it as much as I could, ignored that when it was happening and after, so I didn't I just tried to keep myself uninvolved with that. To me, that was the side of what I was doing that was not real.
They ended 1975 in the same town in which they began it, Philadelphia. Instead of being at the main point, the scene was the Tower Theater from December 27th through an unforgettable New Year's Eve show. Those shows bid farewell to the small halls here in town for a long time. Here, Bruce tells us the kind of relationship he tries to have with his audience.
Well, it's a funny thing. I think that one of the problems is that the audience and the performer have got to leave some room for each other to be human, or else they don't really kind of deserve each other in a funny kind of way, it's like, it's something where I don't know, I see like, I think the position that you get put in is unrealistic to begin with, because you're somebody who, you're a guy, you play the guitar, and you do that good. And that's great, that's nice if you do your job well and people like it and they admire you for it or respect you for it or something. That's a plus. But the rest of the time, you're just, I think everybody's kind of scrambling around in the dark like everybody else is.
Another weird part of Bruce and the Philadelphia story is the time in June of 1973 that he opened a show for the band Chicago at the Spectrum. Now, the folks who went mostly went to see Chicago, and they weren't quite ready for Bruce and his band. They booed him. Hope he felt a little better when he found out that, Philadelphia fans have even booed Santa Claus. But anyway, legend has it that after the Chicago show, Bruce vowed that he'd never play a big arena again, unless he had more say in the matter. And he was the headliner. And 3 years later, when that happened, it happened in Philadelphia. It was October 25th and 26th, 1976, at the very same Spectrum in South Philly. Another great moment in the story between Bruce Springsteen and the city of Philadelphia. Those dates in 1976 were part of a tour supporting Born to Run. By then, they were visiting other cities and doing bigger places, and it would be a few years before Bruce and the band came back here, or that we got a new record for that matter. If you remember, he was tangled up in a lawsuit with his former manager, Mike Appel. That lawsuit kept Bruce from putting out any new material, but it didn't keep him from learning.
Earl, I have a quote here from Bruce, and it really shows you the kind of guy he is. It's an old interview from Rolling Stone, and it hangs above Kevin Gunn's desk, and I love it. He turned me on to it, and I totally love it. The question was, what keeps you going at age 35? Bruce's answer? I was lucky. During the lawsuit, I understood that it's the music that keeps me alive and my relationship with my friends and my attachment to the people and the places I've known. That's my lifeblood. And to give that up for, like, the TV and the cars and the houses, that's not the American dream. That's the booby prize in the end. Those are the booby prizes. And if you fall for them, if when you achieve them, you believe that this is the end in and of itself, then you've been suckered in. Because those are the consolation prizes if you're not careful for selling yourself out or letting the best of yourself slip away. So you got to be vigilant. You got to carry the idea you began with further. And you got to hope that you're headed for higher ground. I love that quote.
But as we all know, the legal stuff finally got worked out. Darkness on the Edge of Town finally came out, and the tour hit the Spectrum in May of 1978. Those shows on the 26th and 27th were only the third and fourth of the tour, and they showed that a few things had changed since Born to Run.
Darkness on the Edge of Town was always a record I felt like I cut sort of flat, you know. I still don't like any of those particular recorded versions of that music. And it was stuff that people, when that record came out, people were very resistant to it in 1978. People really, the radio was resistant to it, and the fans, you know, at the time, they thought they liked it, but then when they saw the stuff in the show, it clicked in.
Bruce and the band did 2 more dates at the Spectrum in 1978, on August 18th and 19th. He spent most of 79 recording The River. The tour supporting that double album started in October of 1980, and it hit the Spectrum for 3 dates in early December, the 6th, the 8th, and the 9th. Kevin Gunn, you were there on the 8th.
December 8th, 1980 was a Bruce Springsteen show like any other Bruce Springsteen show. I brought a spare shirt in the car to change into afterwards because you usually left those shows drenched in sweat. I sprinted out to the car and turned on WMMR like I always do to hear the post-concert recap on all the songs that he played in order. Instead, I heard Beatles songs. I heard a couple of Beatles songs, and I heard another Beatles song, and I actually looked down at the dial to make sure I was on the right frequency, and I was. It was a few minutes later that Michael Tierson came on, and this is what I heard.
If you've just tuned in somehow and you're wondering what the hell is going on, John Lennon is dead. What police describe as a local screwball evidently shot him 3 times. He died shortly after arriving at Roosevelt Hospital in New York City tonight. It happened right on the street in front of the Dakota. That's about all of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's about all we have. Really.
We have no name yet, do we?
Local screwball.
Local screwball. I have something I'll tell you later, but I have a very strange... Anyway, so we're playing John Lennon and Beatle music. That's, I guess, the only thing that I can see is right. Going right back to the beginning here. WMMR.
It wasn't easy to go on stage the next night for Bruce and the band, and it wasn't much easier for the audience either. Reportedly, Bruce decided to do what John and the Beatles had taught him to do: play rock and roll. And that's what they did. Believe it or not, the next time Bruce and the band came back to town in July of 1981, singer-songwriter Harry Chapin was killed in an auto accident on a Long Island expressway. Now, it's ironic because Bruce would come to admire Harry Chapin and also dedicate time and money to Harry's lifelong cause of feeding the hungry. Bruce would also go on to participate in USA for Africa and later make a great appearance in a Harry Chapin tribute show in 1990. Just another fact with Bruce and the E Street Band's Philadelphia story. By the early 80s, the band was far from just a Philadelphia and New Jersey story anymore. They belonged to the entire country. And when Born in the USA hit in June of 1984, their conquering of the world wasn't far behind. In Dave Marsh's great book, Glory Days, he writes that they opened the Born in the USA tour on June 29th in St. Paul, Minnesota, with Bruce telling the crowd, "Here we are, it's been 3 years, I should write, right?" Well, it was September when the tour reached Philadelphia for 6 unforgettable sold-out nights at the Spectrum. 6 dates was pretty much unheard of then, but each night was different. Each night was just as much fun. Right, Pierre?
Well, my memory begins with the Born in the USA affair, and it begins actually with the record coming out. And I have to turn again to Kevin because we all heard about a listening party, but Kevin was the only one from the staff, as I recall, that went to the listening party for the Columbia album, which was to be released, and came back, as you might expect, raving. Then came word of the tour, and Joe Bonadonna was on the air, and I remember going down to the Spectrum the day the tickets went on sale and reporting into Joe's show, and I think something like 2 dates had been announced at the Spectrum, and everyone's hovering, and they instantly sold out. And Joe says, "Pierre, are they going to add any more dates on the air?" I said, "Joe, I think it's coming." And it turned into 6 dates, 6 incredible dates at the Spectrum. For me, it holds special significance because I remember seeing Bruce in California, in San Francisco, after the River Tour, or during the River Tour. And Bruce was on stage, and it was an awesome experience, I thought. And I'd seen Southside Johnny in a little club in San Francisco, so I totally wanted more of this East Coast, Jersey Shore rock and roll vibe that Mr. Springsteen was so known for. But nothing delivered it to me like stepping into the Spectrum that night, standing near the stage with a friend, and there are 2 songs into the thing, and I'm going... The roar of the crowd was nothing short of overwhelming, but I'm going... I turn to my friend who was from here, and I go, "Wait a minute. They're booing the guy. What's going on with that? What did he do? I thought they loved him here. I thought this is his hometown away from his hometown. What's going on?" And he goes, "Listen again." And then it became clear the boos, in fact, were Bruce. It was cool. Oh, I was totally blown away. And I remember also one of the encores I went to several of those first 6 shows, and I remember one of the encores, he says, well, you know, it may be a while before we see you again, so we got to do this song. Pulls out the Santa Claus hat and does Santa Claus is Coming to Town in September. At the Spectrum. It was great because I'd never seen that song done live, so that was cool. So the phenomenon continues to take off, and they keep releasing single after single after single. Finally, Bruce himself later on down the line had to say, all right, the record company wanted to release like a 12th single. He says, that's enough. Let's stop it right there. So this juggernaut continues, and it was to bring him back a summer or so later, where we saw him for 2 nights at Veterans Stadium. These shows were memorable for me for a lot of reasons, but one of them was we picked a winner who got to go on tour with Bruce that summer, and this kid was so enthusiastic, came from a family of about 10 people, and he won about 12 different shows around the United States of America, and he took different members of his rather large family to each show, so we'd check in with him. His first name was John. I'm sorry to say I don't remember his last name, but we'd check in with John, where are you going? We're off to see Bruce in Cincinnati. I said, who are you taking? My dad this time. Cool. We'd check with him a week later. John, where are you going? Well, I'm off to Cleveland. We're taking my brother. He's never seen Bruce. Cool. Where are you going, John? Arizona this time. Where are you going, John? We're off to San Francisco to see Bruce. We're going to see him in L.A. We're going to see him at the Meadowlands. He had such a great summer. And he even got on Action News, which is famous for not allowing any call letters of any competing entity in the media to be on. And they were interviewing him because he'd won this prize, and he's wearing his MMR T-shirt on Channel 6. It was a cool moment. But that stadium show is also cool for me because it was the first time I was turned on to how giving Bruce is, and he gave a great deal of money on both of those shows to 2 organizations, one benefiting the homeless and one benefiting a local food bank. And he announced that gift on stage each night and told people, I'm giving a little something. He didn't boast about it, but he said, why don't you give something too back to your community? I thought that was incredibly neat.
So we didn't see a whole lot of Bruce and the band for a while, simply because they were touring the world, riding the crest of one of the most successful rock albums in history, Born in the USA. Leave it to Bruce to use a car analogy to describe what this period felt like.
It's like there's a point where if you're riding down the highway and the gas pedal gets stuck to the floor of the car. For a minute, that's what happened. You know, I think that's the way I felt. You know, and like it was, you know, and like, you know, but it got unstuck.
The irony, of course, is that Bruce developed a huge following and did bigger and bigger shows. It made it harder to achieve his primary goal.
The whole thing is what our band is about is lessening as much as possible the distance between the performer and the audience, you know. And distance is kind of, when you're on stage, that's kind of your worst enemy. At least it is for ours. It is for us. And so, like, I want to stay very deep down involved in the material, you know. And the best way to do that is you change it a lot so things don't get stale, so you don't run the same routines or something, or, you know, night after night. I mean, we have certain things we do, but the show changes quite a bit, you know, and mainly it keeps the band sharp. It's more entertaining to the crowd because we do have a lot of fans that come back 2 or 3 nights if you're in a town that long, so they get to hear all the different songs that they like, and we get to go through something different on stage at night, so it just keeps it from getting boring, and it keeps it involved, just like I said, down there in the music, which is where you have to be in order you know, to get the emotion that we want to get out of it.
Born in the USA was complicated for other reasons, not the least of which was its misinterpreted title track.
I don't really start from any political point of view, and I don't particularly, or no conscious one. I suppose everybody carries their politics innately and emotionally in their psychology in some